What would you do if you walked into a billionaire's office, and saw your own childhood photo framed on his wall, before he ever even met you? Grace Miller was just a night shift cleaner. No nameplate. No past. Just quiet floors and a silver star necklace she never took off. But that night, everything shifted. A winter storm knocked out half the building's power. Her supervisor shoved a backup keycard into her hand. Clean the CEO's floor. Don't touch anything. She didn't ask questions. She never did. But when she pushed her cart onto the 45th floor, the air felt wrong, too still, too quiet. Red emergency lights flickered like warning signs. And then, she saw it. A photograph. Framed in black. Front and center on the wall. A little girl, 5 years old. Green eyes. Crooked bangs. A chipped silver star necklace around her neck. Grace's breath caught. She reached beneath her uniform and pulled out her own necklace. Same chain. Same chip. Her hands trembled as she opened her wallet. Pulled out the faded photo she'd carried her whole life. Same girl. Same background. Same dress. It wasn't similar. It was identical. She staggered forward, heart racing. And then a deep voice cut through the silence. Who are you really? What if the name he called you wasn't yours, but felt like home? Grace spun around. Her heart slammed in her chest. Standing in the doorway was the man who owned the building, David Walker. Billionaire. CEO. A face she'd only seen in magazines. He didn't speak at first. He just stared. At her. At the photograph. Then back at her. You have her eyes, he said softly. Laura's eyes, my wife. Grace couldn't breathe. David stepped closer, still stunned. My wife and daughter, they died in a fire. 21 years ago. Grace's lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she whispered, I grew up in foster care. No records. No history. Just this necklace, and that photo. David moved behind his desk. Pulled out a folder from a locked drawer. He opened it with trembling hands. Dozens of old photographs spilled out. A woman with soft dark hair. Green eyes. Holding a giggling little girl. Grace leaned in. Her stomach turned. Her knees went weak. The girl in those pictures looked just like her. Same smile. Same eyes. Same necklace. David looked at her again. This time, his voice cracked. Emily. What if the body they buried wasn't yours? Grace dropped into the nearest chair. Her knees couldn't hold the weight of what she'd just seen. David sat across from her, his voice low. After the fire, they said your body was found in your bedroom. The necklace was beside it. That's how they identified you. Grace looked down at the star around her neck. The chain was worn. The tiny chip on the edge, still there. This necklace has never left me, she whispered. Not once. David stared. His breath caught. If you're wearing the original, he paused, shaking his head, then whose body did they bury? The question hung between them like smoke. Grace's hands trembled as she touched the photo again. Everything she thought she knew was cracking. Her name. Her past. Her entire life. But something about the way David looked at her didn't feel strange. It felt familiar. As if, somehow, they had always known each other, without ever meeting. Could it really be possible? Was this truth unraveling, or just another tragic mistake? If you could know the truth in 72 hours, would you dare to ask? David didn't wait. The next morning, he called in Dr. Alan Carter, his private physician of over 2 decades. No questions. Just a DNA test. Quiet. Urgent. Final. 3 days later, the results were back. 99.7% probability. She was his daughter. David stood frozen, the paper in his hand trembling. Grace couldn't speak. She read the number again. Then again. The truth was undeniable, but her heart didn't know what to do with it. He didn't waste time. That same afternoon, he took her to the old family townhouse in Cambridge, the one sealed since the fire. Inside, dust covered the furniture, but her books were still on the shelf. Fairy tales. Her name scribbled in faded crayon. A pair of tiny shoes sat beneath the stairs. She ran her fingers along the porch rail and whispered, "I don't remember it, but it smells familiar." David smiled. Something in him shifted. Hope returned to his eyes. But Grace? She wasn't ready to trust it yet. Because not everyone was ready to welcome her back. Sometimes, the warmest smile hides the coldest intentions. Grace met Madison Cole on a Tuesday morning. Perfect hair. Polished nails. A smile that seemed to flicker, just a second too long. David's longtime assistant stood beside him like she'd always belonged there. "It's so lovely to finally meet you," Madison said, voice syrup smooth. "You've certainly made quite the impression." Grace smiled back. Polite. Guarded. But her instincts whispered something colder beneath that perfect greeting. In the days that followed, Madison moved quietly. She smiled in rooms. Listened when others spoke. And then she acted. A discreet call. A favor cashed in. A private investigator hired. Grace was followed across Boston, to the library, a print shop, even the Boston Globe building. Photos were taken. Notes compiled. Context twisted. Grace felt the shift, the way Madison's presence lingered, her tone too precise, her words too careful. But she didn't confront her. Not yet. She knew women like Madison didn't play in the open. One night, Madison leaned in close to David and whispered. "You're grieving, David. You want her to be real, but what if she's not? What if the truth was right in front of you, but someone changed the page?" Madison didn't need proof. Just opportunity. With one well-placed bribe, a compromised lab tech, and a second DNA test, the results were rewritten. This time, the document read. No familial match. Possible sample contamination. She handed it to David herself, with solemn eyes and a quiet voice. I didn't want to believe it either. But that wasn't all. She placed a manila folder on his desk, photographs of Grace walking near the Boston Globe, printing documents, visiting unfamiliar buildings. Harmless moments, twisted into something calculated. David's hands trembled. His heart told him one thing, but grief told him another. He called Grace in that evening. No warmth. No smile. You timed it, he said coldly. Right after the anniversary article. You applied for the job. You knew exactly what to say. Grace's eyes widened. I didn't even know who you were, she whispered. I wasn't trying to. But it didn't matter. David spread the photos across the table. You targeted me. Silence. Then Grace reached up, unclasped the silver star from her neck, and set it gently on the counter. This was never fake, she said. And walked away. When your only proof of love is left behind, what do you hold on to? 3 months passed. Grace Miller disappeared from Boston and surfaced in a small coastal town called Crescent Bay. No headlines. No attention. Just salt in the air and silence in her chest. She took a job waiting tables at a local diner. The regulars didn't ask questions, and she didn't offer answers. Her world shrank down to coffee pots, quiet sunrises, and the sound of waves outside her apartment window. But some habits never left. Some nights, her fingers still reached for the silver star necklace that no longer hung around her neck. And in dreams, David returned, never as a CEO, but as the man who held her photo like it was sacred. Every dream ended the same way. "I'm sorry," he'd whisper. "I believed the wrong world." Back in Boston, David buried himself in boardrooms and business deals, trying to forget the girl with green eyes. Until one afternoon, his phone rang. Dr. Alan Carter was on the line. "David, we never ran a second DNA test. The original envelope was never opened, so what was he really told?" David didn't wait. The moment Dr. Carter hung up, he tore through his office drawer, the one he hadn't touched since the night Grace walked away. And there it was. The original DNA test. Still sealed. His breath caught. Fingers shaking, he ripped it open. 99.7% probability. Paternity confirmed. Grace was Emily. He dropped into his chair, the paper crushed in his fist. His mind replayed every word, every accusation, and her final sentence. This was never fake. The truth had never changed. Only his belief in it had. Within the hour, Madison was called in. She tried to deny everything. Claimed concern. Confusion. Loyalty. But under pressure, her mask cracked. "You were going to give her everything," she snapped. "The company. The legacy. I protected you." "No," David said coldly. "You destroyed us." He fired her on the spot. But it didn't bring Grace back. She was gone, and after what he'd done, why would she ever believe anything again? Then, just as he was about to leave the office, a plain envelope slid across his desk. Inside, a photo. Grace. In a diner. Smiling faintly. Alive. "Would you drive 5 hours for a chance to say sorry, or goodbye?" David didn't wait for his team. Or a car service. Or a plan. He grabbed his keys and drove. 5 hours. No stops. White-knuckled on the wheel, heart pounding with every mile. Crescent Bay. Quiet. Unassuming. The kind of place where no one knew his name. But in the corner of Lily's diner, he saw her. Grace. Her ponytail bounced as she moved from booth to booth, refilling coffee, collecting plates. She hadn't seen him yet. But he couldn't look away. Then she turned. And froze. The tray in her hands almost slipped. Outside, on a weather-worn bench facing the sea, they sat in silence. "I was wrong," David finally said. So deeply wrong. He handed her the real DNA results. She read them. Said nothing at first. "I forgave you," she whispered, eyes on the waves. "But trust? That's something else." He nodded, voice tight. "I don't expect it. I only hope for time." Grace looked at him. Older than before. Stronger. Quietly scarred. Then David reached into his coat, and opened a small box. Inside, a gold version of the silver star necklace shimmered in the afternoon light. Not a replacement. A beginning. Can a single word rebuild what was lost? Grace looked down at the gold star necklace. It wasn't a replacement for what she'd lost. It was something else entirely, a chance to begin again, if she was willing. Her fingers closed around it. She turned to him. "Will you help me put it on?" David's hands shook as he fastened the clasp behind her neck. When it settled against her skin, she didn't let go of it. Not right away. She placed her hand over it, and breathed in. Then she looked at him, really looked. "Hi, Dad." He didn't respond. Not with words. Tears slipped down his cheeks, the kind he didn't wipe away. And in that moment, they weren't a CEO and a stranger anymore. They were just two people, choosing each other after all the reasons not to. They sat on the bench in silence. Shoulders touching. No need to speak. The grief still lived there. But so did something stronger. They hadn't erased the past. But they were finally writing the next page, together. If someone shattered your trust but returned with the truth, would you let them back in?